This is John Martinka and the Getting the Deal Done podcast series with my special guest today, Joe Fugere, the founder and CEO of Tutta Bella. You can find them at tuttabella.com, TUTTABELLA.com. And Joe's going to tell us about business lessons and his involvement with the community, much more. And we're going to start with Joe. Tell us a little bit about starting Tutta Bella and what makes Neapolitan pizza so good compared to all the other kinds of pizza we see and hear about.
Great. Well, John, first of all, I want to thank you for including me in your podcast series. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you and to interact with not only you, but the people that you interact with. And you've introduced me to some amazing people. And I'm sure that this podcast will result in even more of those introductions. So I just want to thank you for that. Well, you asked me about a topic that's obviously very, very dear to me. And, Tutta Bella, I think like all business owners and founders, I was going through a midlife crisis. I was 40, mid 40s, 44 years old, and working in a great job. I was working for Starbucks at the time, great company, but I felt like there's just, I kind of played out my life. Like, how is this going to play out over the next 20 years? And I thought, well, I can look back the past 20 years and say, I had a successful job. I had great bosses. I did some good things. But I think what was missing for me back then was this idea of doing something meaningful. How can I, in my current job, do something meaningful? And I really came to the conclusion that the only way that was going to happen for me was to start my own business. And I felt like I was at the age where I'd had enough experience behind me that I could, pull it off. And that at the same time, I had years ahead of me. So I think that mid 40s is probably a time where a lot of people are going through those same questions. I started in my training and background is in food and beverage. I have a degree from Washington State University in hospitality business management, and I just felt like I needed to lean on that a bit. When you're in the food business, it's a high chance of failure. And my strategy was to find something, a category that was extremely popular, because your chances of success were going to be higher, and do it better than anybody else. Try to be best in class. So for me, it was pizza. The two most popular foods in America are, at the time, and still are today, burgers and pizza. Burgers didn't really resonate with me. I'm Italian by heritage. And I started really researching. Back then, Google was fairly new, but I was using Google and researching the heritage, the background, the history of pizza. And it kind of aligned with what my grandmother had told me. She was old world grandmother who immigrated with her parents to Seattle in the early 1900s. And growing up, my grandmother had talked a lot about the pizza in Seattle and how it didn't compare to the pizza of her homeland. So that resonated with me. I started research and I discovered that the birthplace of pizza was right outside my grandmother's hometown. She was from Calabria. Naples is not far away. And the more I dug into it, I realized this is really something. The simplicity of ingredients, which I've always been a fan of, is respecting ingredients, keeping it simple, and cooking or preparing them properly. And that's what Neapolitan pizza is all about. It's only 4 ingredients in the dough, and the toppings are as simple as crushed tomatoes with a little olive oil and sea salt and fresh cheese. And the more I learned about it, the more I wanted to bring that food to Seattle and to my family and my friends and my neighborhood. And that's kind of where it started. Very microcosm, if you will. And it just kind of grew from there. I went to Italy. I was introduced to some Neapolitan master pizza makers that had where pizza had been in the family for generations, and learned how to make pizza from the masters. Brought not only those skills, but the commitment to the ingredients. Back in 2004, believe it or not, it was almost impossible to find Tipo 00 flour, the tomatoes of Naples, And some of these ingredients that were key to even fresh beer yeast wasn't that relevant or that prevalent in restaurants. You could find it in bakeries, in other places, but not in restaurants. So I had to really do my homework and be committed to getting the ingredients right and the technique right. So, Neapolitan pizza is using these great authentic ingredients cooked in a very authentic way. For example, you have to hand stretch the dough. You can't use a roller. The mixer has to be very slow. Hobart mixers didn't work at the time because they were too fast. So I had to really have a commitment that other pizza makers didn't take. I was surprised that there were a number of Neapolitan pizza makers in Seattle that from Naples that took shortcuts when they got here because they didn't want to commit to the wood-fired oven. They didn't want to commit to the mixer. They didn't want to commit to importing Tipo 00 flour. I was committed to all those things and opened my pizzeria in 2004 in the Columbia City neighborhood, which is what affectionately is referred to as part of Garlic Gulch, the Rainier Valley, which for many, many years was full of Italian immigrants.
Okay. Well, I know the oven plays a big part. How hot do the ovens get and it's the char on your pizza that amazing.
Well, people like to use the target of 800 degrees Fahrenheit, but you can make really good Neapolitan pizzas anywhere from 700 to 900, and it all depends on how big the fire is, what the ambient temperature is, how long the fire's been burning, because the hearth is gonna warm up. But I would say an average 800 degrees for 90 seconds is all it takes to cook a Neapolitan pizza.
Okay. So let's shift to business. Last year, 2020, was a challenge for everyone in the hospitality industry, other than maybe just people with already had drive-through lanes. So you built a really good strategic partnership, and you maybe tell us quickly about that, but then tips on what makes a good strategic partnership.
Yes, well, we were lucky enough. I would say we had just started in the beginning of the year, maybe the end of 2019, to work with QFC. I don't know if you or your listeners and watchers understand that or even know that QFC had not opened a new store in over 10 years. So I think it was pretty much understood that they had grown a bit sluggish in their growth plans. They had been acquired by Kroger, and I think we're just kind of trying to figure out what to do. But late in 2019, they approached us because they'd really started to think about opening their next location, their first kind of new QFC, and approached us and wanted us to run the pizza operation inside. They really wanted a beloved local brand. And we had we opened a kiosk, which we call a grocerant, inside the Kirkland Urban QFC. And part of that opening, they suggested that we might have a little grab and go section of our salads, because our salads are very popular in our restaurants, and maybe some of our pastas and lasagnas and desserts. It turns out, John, that little 4 feet of grab and go refrigerated space inside of our grocerant kind of took off. And when COVID hit, the CEO, Chris Albee, who's just an amazing person, by the way, if you don't know her, called me up, I think the day after the restaurants were closed down, and offered a proposal. She said, what about expanding that grab and go program to more QFCs? Not the pizza program, because that's a big commitment, but just that 4 feet of refrigerated space. So we went from testing in a couple stores to today we're in 40 stores. But I think in a matter of 4 weeks, we went from 5 to 35 locations at QFC. And today it's kind of a mainstay of our business. I mean, it's growing rapidly. In the last year, we've seen almost a triple-digit increase in same-store sales in that particular program, because people are trying it, and it's working. And grocery is all about trial. People try it, they love it, and it becomes part of their routine. But the second part of your question was about what makes a good strategic partnership, and that could not have been a better question, John, because I think what happens is that when you partner with a big company, there's that risk of them kind of calling the shots for you. And I have a mentor, I'm sure you know him, and many of your listeners and watchers might as well, Howard Behar from Starbucks. And he's always been an advisor and a mentor. And one of the things that he's always taught me about my business is that we should control the direction of the brand and where it goes. And if you to team up with someone else, be really careful to not give into the pressure of them wanting to make it their brand. So I'd say that with any strategic partnership, make sure that you know what your goals are for your brand, and make sure that you don't lose control of it.
Great advice. Thank you, Joe. I'm going to share with you, when you're talking about the grab and go, I had a cup of coffee with a friend of maybe 3-4 weeks ago, and I had something for him, and I put it in one of your salad containers that we had kept. And he says, "Oh my God, we get 6 or 7 of their salads every week from QFC." And
no, that's exactly my point earlier about trial. Our salads are more expensive, so they're going to be next. Our salads are roughly $10 a piece. They're right next to the $5 salads that that are there for they serve a purpose.
Yeah.
But when you compare them, you may be a little bit price sensitive to our salad, because he's like, a Caesar salad next to a Caesar salad. Why is yours twice as much? But when you take it home and you realize that the lettuce is not gas flushed with nitrogen like the other salad, or that the cheese is shaved, aged Parmigiano Reggiano, and the croutons are made with Macrina ciabatta bread, and the dressing is made from real eggs, and it's just, there's a lot of love and details in that salad, and it's twice as expensive, but you buy it, you taste it, you go, okay, this is it. So people might have been a little hesitant at first. They try it, and then we see that habit growing, and now we're grabbing 2 or 3 or 4 so that it can last them through the week. It's awesome. It's been awesome to watch the growth.
so, personal sideline question: when is the Caesar dressing going to be sold in the stores or restaurants?
Well, that's the thing, John, about this whole grocery business. People refer to it as CPG, consumer product goods, and it's very different than restaurant. The scalability is what is amazing. In a restaurant, you build one at a time, and it takes a big commitment, capital and investment or debt or whatever it might be, and you got to train 50 people, and you got to make everything from scratch. Whereas in the restaurants, everything's made from, or in the grocery stores, it's all made from scratch, but you also work with co-packers, and there are some amazing co-packers out there that do high quality things. So we're talking to a number of co-packers. We're making everything ourselves now in a production facility, but we're talking to co-packers, and you have to be really careful to make sure that they stay true to the recipe. So Caesar dressing or Napoli dressing or jarred tomato sauces, maybe our croutons at one point, can all be done by a co-packer. And some brands have been very successful at it. And as you know, some brands haven't. You open a jar of something that your favorite restaurant and it doesn't compare. And we just won't go down that path. We won't put it on the shelf unless it tastes exactly like the restaurant version.
Okay. So let's shift topic a little bit. You and your company have been known for community involvement, helping people to learn a career, and even on political advisory in the city of Seattle. Whether they listen to you or not, I don't know, but talk about all of that.
Well, even if they listen once, I feel like it's worth the effort. And I think that just starting with the political, and I'll go into community. I really felt like small businesses needed a voice. If you think about it in politics, the workers these days have a great voice because there are a lot of unions, a lot of labor movements that are really supporting and representing the needs of the worker, which is fantastic. We need that. On the other end of the spectrum, big business is represented in politics because they can afford to hire expensive lobbyists. And those people are, almost every day they're living in Olympia or DC, just, meeting with legislators. The forgotten class, if you will, are those people in the middle. The small business owners are like not represented. Who represents us? So the mayor of Seattle, and the governor has had this, and now Patty Murray at the national level, all kind of understood that small businesses are the backbone of our economy and need to be listened to. So I was selected as one of the co-chairs of the mayor's Small Business Advisory Council, the first one the city of Seattle has had in its history. And I really feel like you said, we're not always listened to. Sometimes we're asked to support the mayor's position, but more times than not, maybe 50% of the time, the mayor comes to us and says, "You got to weigh in, and what are we missing in this legislation?" And they may or may not listen to you, but they're always asking.
Okay. Talk about
And when it
community.
comes to community, it's just I want to recognize, I think my mother for instilling in me this sense of generosity. It all started when I opened the doors 2004, and people come in, and churches and nonprofits and community organizations, they all want help. They're fundraising and they're looking for support, and I just tried to find a way to say yes to every single one of them. I can't write a big fat check all the time, but you definitely can give a gift card, or there's something you can do. And all I suggest to business owners is give those guys a chance to ask, and think about what you could possibly do for a community organization, and it just blossomed from there. We now today have a reputation for being so community oriented and minded, and a lot of that has come from just being good listeners. Volunteering sometimes, volunteering your time can be as impactful as sponsoring an event, and volunteering doesn't cost you anything but your time.
And I know that you recently announced you have a fundraiser program for organizations that will sell your product and take a cut.
Yeah, again, that came from COVID related opportunity. We had in the past been at one school in particular had sponsored their Italian dinner every year by providing our tomatoes and pasta from our vendors, and we this year they didn't have that dinner, so they were scratching their heads and thinking, well, what could we do? And one of the volunteers from the school had seen our grab and go products at PUFC, and so, well, what if we the candy bars or magazine subscriptions or Girl Scout cookies? What if we sold your grab and go items and your cocktails and your pizzas, because we have take and bake pizzas as well, and did them as a fundraiser? So the way we worked it was people placed their orders. We had a refrigerated truck that we'd borrowed from one of our vendors, and on one Saturday afternoon, we delivered all these refrigerated items to the school and put it in their walk-ins, and parents came and picked them up, and they made it was a very successful event. That's now launched a new fundraiser program, and it's going really well.
Good.
We're still refining it, but we're calling it something about pie in the sky, or easy as pie. We're calling it easy as pie.
Okay. Good. Catchy name, and it's a lot healthier than cookies and candy bars.
Well, and the thing about healthiness, people often throw pizza under the bus that it's a junk food, but Neapolitan pizza, and you heard me in the beginning of this podcast, it's part of the Mediterranean diet. You're using low gluten flour, extra virgin olive oil, whole milk mozzarella. I mean, these are wholesome foods, not junk foods. And I think if there's any mission that I'm out there to prove, it's to prove and to explain, or maybe to educate people, that pizza is a wholesome food.
So, Joe, I've got two more questions for you and topics. If you have any others, let me know.
Okay.
And I think I'm going to take a break and go have some Tutta Bella pizza left over from last night.
I love that, John. Thank you. You've been such a great friend and customer, so I can't thank you enough.
What's the vision for Tutta Bella with all that's changed due to COVID and restaurants and takeout, delivery, grab and go, etc.? What do you see for your next half dozen restaurants?
All businesses, we're all supposed to have a vision, right? I mean, people always ask, what is the strategic vision? And it is extremely important. I mean, you have to have a purpose and a mission. You also have to have a vision. But I think one of the things I thought you were going to ask me today that ties into this answer is, what did I learn from COVID? Because I think that has affected my vision. And regardless of what your vision might be and what your plans might be for the future, what COVID has taught us is that those plans can change. So if anything, being nimble and being open to ideas and acting on things, I think that the business owners in general, maybe I'm generalizing, we tend to analyze a lot, and I call it paralysis by analysis. We think and think and think and overthink. What COVID taught us is we had to act quickly on things, and I'm going to apply that in the future. It's like, it's okay to try something and fail at it and move on quickly. That's the other thing. Move on quickly. We've had to just, at lightning speed, we've had to make decisions. And so I'd say that my vision is to continue getting to develop products and our culture that goes with those products into more and more people's stomachs and minds and bodies and souls. I mean, it's just, our brand has a life of its own. I'm here as a steward of that brand. I have to kind of figure out what's the potential of Tutta and let it do its thing. Just kind of be there to support it.
You see yourself, as a follow-up to that last question, do you see yourself more as a restaurant or more as a provider of food via multiple channels like QFC and other places and Costco, et cetera?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you ask, because I don't know if it's more or less. It's going to be both. There's going to be some combination, and I think the marketplace will determine what that combination is. Now, if COVID has allowed because of all the restaurant closings, 5,000 restaurants are going to be closed in the state of Washington because of COVID. That might provide a great opportunity for us to get, to open more restaurants. I know that the CPG, the grocery channel, provides tremendous opportunity for growth. We're going to explore both, but so do airports and universities and hospitals and vending machines. And I mean, we're just exploring all of it, John. And that's what COVID has done, is it's opened our eyes to things beyond restaurants. But I'm a restaurant guy, so there will always be that element of my business.
Okay, so my final one is, and you've already answered this partially when you said, be nimble, do things, and accept failure if it doesn't work. What other general business tips would you give to business owners and wannabe business owners?
Well, I think I actually gave a lecture on this topic once, and that is, do what you love. You have to love it. Imagine living your life and looking back and saying, I really didn't love it. I mean, I liked it, but I didn't love it. You just gotta keep reminding yourself what you love. Write it down, even if you have to. And the other thing is, do what you're good at. And those things should align. I mean, you got to find a way that if you are in love with something, and in my case, let's use travel, for example. How can travel, which is something I love to do, align with something that I'm good at, which is running restaurants? Well, we incorporate travel to Italy into our cultural immersion tours, and you just things. I love restaurant. I love architecture and design. So you think about the things that I love gardening. So all these things do have a crossover. So you just try to find a place where they intersect. And then I think the other advice is always do the right thing. There's temptations out there. People advise you to. They think that you might get advice that something else is a smart thing to do, but you always have to come back to what your heart. Listen to your heart. You're never going to go wrong by listening to what your heart tells you. And there's, profit should be a result of doing the right thing. It shouldn't be the goal. It should be the result, I guess, is my final bit of advice. At least applies to me.
Well, I might have to plagiarize that with the heart. I always tell my clients when they're buying or selling a company, go with what your gut tells you. If something is off, if the other side, you don't trust them, go with that.
Absolutely.
It's the heart and the gut. And I think that's a great philosophy to have.
Thanks, John. I agree. And I think you practice that. I see that in what you do with your clients and the people that you surround yourself with. There's a lot of heart in what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to wrap this up. Again, this is Joe Fugere at tuttabella.com, the best pizza in the Seattle area. And I'm proud to have Joe has become a friend of my wife and and I. So again, the Getting the Deal Done podcast series with Joe Fugere. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, John. Bon appetito.
Yeah.